The following is a clip from Kentucky Sports Radio, which airs Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon on stations throughout Kentucky and streaming on iHeartRadio. To hear the entire episode, download the podcast on the iHeartRadio app.
The Cats get a huge win on the road to make sure that the season is still alive. 63-56 against Tennessee. A massive win for Kentucky, and I think probably one of the biggest road wins at Tennessee maybe ever, if in terms of how much you needed it and in terms of how surprising it was. I mean, the stat that's the most important and the most obvious is there's never been an unranked team in Kentucky history go play a top 5 ranked team on their home floor and beat them. It's never happened. Now, I mean, part of that is because Kentucky's not unranked most of the time. But still, that's an amazing stat, and I think it shows you how big this win is. Kentucky was ended up going off a 12-point underdog. Opened at 13.5. Kentucky hadn't been that big an underdog. I think it was since the North Carolina game or something like 20. I don't even remember what year it was. I mean, it had been a long time. And Kentucky went and won the game, and I thought played excellent. Was down 8-0 to start. But then kind of controlled the game the rest of the way, led most of the rest of the game on the road, and you got to give the Cats and Calipari and the coaching staff a lot of credit. We'll open up the phones here in just a minute, but just want to go over some stuff that I think is important. First of all, I mean, how many times has there been a more surprising regular season road win? I was sitting here trying to think of times that I've been more surprised. Well, I don't know if I've ever been more surprised. But games like this, West Virginia with Kevin Knox and those guys when they went to West Virginia and didn't just win but dominated that game. I think the Jody Meeks 54-point scoring at Tennessee win was very surprising with the Billy Gillespie team that wasn't very good and went and won that game. But there aren't a lot where the Kentucky team just goes in and plays well. And, that was the number one defense in the country. And I know Kentucky only scored 63 points, but I felt like offensively they were a lot more efficient. They shot the ball at a pretty good they actually didn't shoot the ball at a great percentage in the first half, but did a little bit better in the second half, I believe. I don't know if I have those numbers right. They had 18 turnovers, which is not what you want. But they did what they needed to do. But the story to me is defensively. I mean, defensively, this was a really, really great performance, and I think some guys have to be noted. I think Antonio Reeves played the best defense I've seen him play at Kentucky. I'm not going to say he's a lockdown defender, but I thought he played really, really well defensively throughout. In his few minutes, I thought Thiero played well defensively. Toppin was bad offensively, but I thought he played well defensively in a lot of the game. I think Livingston in his minutes played well defensively. They just defensively, and Cason Wallace, even though he was in foul trouble a lot, especially at the end, I thought played well defensively. Defensively, that's the best they've played, and it's not even close. I mean, most of Tennessee's buckets were, the big guy kind of took Oscar one-on-one a lot. But I actually heard Cal at the end of the game say something that I thought was really smart. Cal said that his staff decided that they had to give up no threes. Well, good decision, because I think one of the problems Kentucky's had for a lot of years is I say make these teams beat us shooting twos, because I don't think a lot of them can, and this Tennessee team couldn't. They really played well on the three-point line, and I thought that was really smart, even though that led to Oscar getting taken by Plavic. What's his name? Plavic is the drug, right, Billy? What's his name? Plavic?
Plavsic?
Yeah. He makes me sick to watch him. I'll say that.
There you go. Yep.
I mean, he does, because he fouls more than anyone on the planet. How that dude doesn't foul out every game, I don't know, because he just pushes and grabs, and Tennessee is a flopping, grabbing team. They just are. And so, there were some really bad calls in this game, but it's hard not to have bad calls in some way against Tennessee, because this Tennessee team takes the view of the old Rick Pitino Louisville teams. Remember, Pitino used to say, foul all the time, they can't call all of them. I kind of feel like Tennessee does that as well. I mean, they foul a lot, and they can't call all of them, and they get away with stuff, and there were some really bad calls at the end of the game. I thought the Vescovi flagrant on Reeves. I thought that was the wrong call. I didn't hate it as much as most people did for two reasons. One, Reeves should have kicked that out. Frederick was open. There was a 3 there that could have been a dagger. Two, I do think Vescovi fouled. He got into him. But to be fair, both teams were doing that the whole game. And three, I don't think Reeves intentionally hit him with an elbow, but that's the rule, and I hate the rule. So it was a mess up. But the one that bothered me a lot more was the walk on Wallace when we were up 8, I think the play before, because he did not walk, or we were up 5, maybe we were up 5 or 7. It would have been 9. He did not walk, and that was a fast break, and that could have been a dunk, and I thought the ref really screwed that call up. But regardless, my point of all that's to say, with officiating that was difficult, and with Tennessee playing a certain way, Kentucky was still able to win the game, and I give them a lot of credit. And I'm a big believer, okay? You've heard me say, if you listen to the show, everybody makes mistakes. And the key is, number 1, acknowledging the mistakes, number 2, changing them. But when people do number 1 and 2, I think it's very important that you don't then almost punish them for doing it, because then if what they do succeeds, you can't go, well, why didn't you do it earlier? Right? So all year, if you've been listening, and I'm not alone in this, the basketball Benny position has been play Wallace, Frederick, Reeves, Toppin, and Oscar. Play that lineup. This week it came out that they had only played that lineup for 20 offensive possessions all year. And in it, Kentucky had been 2.5 times more efficient than they had with any other lineup on the court. 2.5 times more efficient. I can't even tell you how rare that is. And yet it had only played 20 offensive possessions. And that drove me crazy. And I think it drove a lot of fans crazy. And fans have been calling for that lineup since about the second or third game of the year. Well, today, when we went down 8-0, Cal called timeout and put that lineup in. And that lineup went from 8-0 to we were up 13-11. 15-11, I think. It was either 13-11 or 15-11. They basically turned the game around. And then Cason Wallace got his second foul, and he was out for the rest of the first half, so they couldn't play it the rest of the first half. Then in the second half, he didn't start that lineup, and we actually did not see the lineup. And, Billy, I was losing my mind watching the game that he wouldn't put that lineup in. We didn't see the lineup until 6 minutes left, or 6.5 minutes left. It was 48-48. And for the first time, because Cason came off the bench after his fourth foul, that lineup was in. And from 48-48, they made it 58-50 and hung on and won the game. By my count, that lineup was beat Tennessee 29-11. So I want you to think about that. Tennessee beat us by 11 with every other lineup. But with that lineup, we beat them by 18. That lineup is the difference between winning and losing the game. I mean, it's the difference between winning and losing by double digits. And as a matter of fact, if you believe Vegas always knows, the spread at game time was 11.5. If you play that lineup the whole game, you lose by 11, which is exactly what Vegas predicted. But he changed. And so rather than be, why hasn't he played that the rest of the year, which I think we could all say, we should say, okay, maybe they saw that, and now that's what we're going to play. You can't play it the whole game. You're going to have to play. I think Livingston's a great six-man. You're going to play Wheeler some, but I think the days of Wheeler playing 37 minutes have to end. Like, they have to end. He should play. He should. All those minutes when Wallace was hurt or he had fouls, those should be Wheeler minutes, because he'll be better at the point than what we were trying to do most of the time. But you know what? He can't play 30. You're not going to win with 37 or 38 minutes on this team. And by the way, it's not a knock on him. It's an acknowledgement of the rest of the team, right? It's an acknowledgement that we don't have a lot of guys who can beat people off the bounce. If he was standing there with Malik Monk and on the other side, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, then yes, you could play him 37 or 38 minutes. But he doesn't have that. So I don't think he can play 37 minutes. I think that lineup as the base of your team with Livingston, Wheeler, Ware as your primary subs, and then Thiero sometimes, I think that's a team, can it win a title? Maybe not. But that's a team that can really do a lot of stuff, and we saw it today. So I give Calipari and the staff credit for doing it. I give the basketball Bennies credit for thinking it and saying it. Now the key is doing it going forward. He probably won't start that lineup against Georgia, but it needs to play a lot. Because to me, that's the lineup that makes this team a contender. And I'll say this. When you lose at home to South Carolina, that means you can lose to anybody. You lose at home to South Carolina, you can lose to anybody. But when you beat Tennessee on the road with this team, well, then you can beat anybody. So we may be a group that can lose to anybody, and we can beat anybody. Well, that'll make the games exciting. But it also means that the season's not over. This is an NCAA tournament this year that if you get in, I think really anything can happen. Because I don't really think anybody's all that good. So get in and see what happens. You put that group we saw on the floor that got Kentucky the lead and then won the game, you put them for the rest of the year, I think this is a team that can do something. We'll see if that ends up being what we do. But for today, an awesome win, a fun win. This was the first game all year that felt like Kentucky basketball, right? You were nervous. You were like, are they going to pull it out? They kept making the plays they needed to make. This was the first game that kind of felt like Kentucky basketball, and it was a great feeling, right? And so now all of a sudden this Georgia game Tuesday night, which was going to be 9 o'clock, and I didn't know if people could go, now I'm excited about it. I'm sitting here thinking I was going to be gone, Billy. I was going to be out of town, and now I'm thinking about actually coming back and like having like a watch party at the bar because I'm excited again.
There you go.
A basketball team that I was – well, would you come? Oh, you can't come. That's right.
Yeah, I can't.
Unfortunately. Well, nevertheless, a basketball team that I was like, man, it's going to be hard to do 2 more months of this. Now, I'm excited to watch them. I want to see them play again because we saw something that could connect and maybe have success. All right, now before we go, did you find what I was looking for?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, so if you listen to the morning show, we have a caller named Chester. And he and John Short are the only 2 people I know that picked Kentucky to win today. And he called in this week, and he predicted what was going to happen. Go ahead and play it.
Okay. There's a old saying, Matt, that says the big possum walks late at night. And what I want to say about that is that I think that I know it's our job to talk about Cal going and complaining, but as much as we can as fans to hold it together. It's not late enough just yet. It's about midnight. But I think if we could hold it to the end of this season and just try to stay positive and cheer on these boys, there is a chance that we get in that tournament. Last year, we wiped the floor with Kansas. You go on those message boards. They was wanting Bill Self to be fired. They was wanting to take him out of there the next day. Well, they learned about the big possum. They went, and I think we can do it too if we can just stay there. Because at the end of this season, if we make a run on this thing, if Cal gets those boys' head in it, and, and maybe he does something, I don't know, does something, win things out to eat or something, and they get to laughing and having a good time, they could just come together in a moment like that. It happens in sports. Then these boys could turn up, and they could just start playing like they played out there at the Bahamas, and we could run this thing. And I just think we need to stay positive and hold it together to the end of this season. Then we'll evaluate it. I felt the same way about Joker, and I know we did that. We waited to the end, and then we got rid of him.
There you go. So there you go. The big possum comes out at night. Billy, I was not familiar with that saying. Were you?
No, but it makes me smile so much every time I hear him say possum.
I'm not sure if it's a real saying. But if it is, the big possum comes out at night, and maybe it poked its head out this evening. 859-280-2287. It should be a much happier set of calls today. We'll take them right after this. This is the local Toyota dealers, KSR postgame show.